Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Guys Talkin Houses. I'm Stephen Barnhill.
And I'm Marc Elliot.
And guys, today we're going to get into some really interesting topics. There's been some articles that have come out with regards to the average age of the first-time home buyer being higher than it's ever been, exactly how many renters there are for houses on the market and that number going up. And then of course we're going to get into some interest rate discussion. So Marc, let's just jump right into it. The bombshell article of the week that I saw was this article discussing the average age of the first-time home buyer. And that age right now is 38 years old across the US, and then average income just into the six figures, just over $100,000. So I want to unpack that, why you think that is the case. Obviously, we know interest rates are high, we know inflation's high, we know home prices are higher than they've ever been, but really lock in on what's causing, this average age of the first-time home buyer to be so high. And then also let's kind of give a nice silver lining to it. What are some things that a home buyer who, let's say, is 26, 27 years old, maybe isn't making six figures at 50, 60 grand a year, can they still buy a home? How can they still buy a home? And let's give them some encouragement if there is some to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of things going on there. Number one, I'm always shocked that people tell me, "Oh, I thought I had to have 20% down
Right.
to buy a house," and you don't. And we'll get into that here in a minute. That's part of it. Insurance. We're here in Houston, Texas. So in Iowa or Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from, insurance is super cheap in comparison, and taxes too. And here, we don't have a state income tax, so they sort of make up for that with property tax.
Yep.
And then the insurance is higher than it's ever been, just because of all the claims from storms, windstorms, things like that. So here that is causing part of the issue. But often people just, they get on the internet, they read things, they don't really know who to ask. They don't teach this stuff in high school, so
No.
they don't really understand it. And so we're finding that, it's an older first-time buyer that we're seeing. And I think, sometimes some of those folks are still, maybe they're still living at home with their parents.
Maybe, yeah.
Longer. And you know what? I mean, if you're going to give me free rent and feed me and put clothes on me and buy me a car or whatever, I'm probably going to live there too for as long as I can possibly drag that out.
Probably
right?
not till 38, but maybe late 20s, early.
But yeah, so I mean, I think it's just not, and kind of lastly, I think the American homeownership dream isn't necessarily what it used to be. We're not buying, a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath, white picket fence and a little dog anymore. We're buying a condo downtown, overlooking the city, or something like that. It's not the same buyer that we used to have, and the American dream looks different today.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think a lot of people, the world is much more open in the sense that if you have an internet connection and you have a job that allows you to be remote, you can pretty much work from anywhere. And so you see a lot of people not, and especially in their youth, not wanting to get tethered down to a specific geographic location. So they're kind of hopping and renting. And then by the time they hit that mid-30 mark, they're ready to go ahead and settle down and buy a home. But let's talk about the buyer who's maybe 25 years old. He's getting married. He is somebody who wants to put some roots down, start a family, and he's making 50 grand. He sees a home that's, let's say in this market in Houston, it's reasonable to say you can find a nice home outside of the city for 290 to 320.
Sure.
And he's reading this article. Okay, 38 years old. I need to make 120 grand to buy the average home in the US. What are some ways that we can reach out to that buyer and let them know, like, look, here's some options that you have. Here's what's in front of you. Here's how you can make home ownership happen, or make home happen, as your tagline is.
Right.
How do we get that buyer to understand that home ownership is possible for them? Because I think a lot more young buyers would enter the market if they knew that it was a real possibility for them. And I think when I talked to the young buyers, they were very discouraged about being able to buy a home until we had the conversation,
Right.
and then things changed.
Yeah, and once we've engaged in that conversation and explained the possibilities, then they see the light. I mean, if you're a renter and you go rent a house, you've got to have first month's rent, deposit, and all this. and rent is not cheap,
No.
these days. So let's say your rent's $2,000, your deposit's another 2,000, that's $4,000.
Right.
I've had people buy a house and bring $600 to closing.
Exactly.
So, and so how we get there, first of all, you don't have to put 20% down by any means. You can put zero down if you use a down payment assistance program, but even an FHA loan is 3.5%.
Right.
Conventional has a program for 3% down. So there's certainly possibilities out there. But if we have, a down payment assistance program that provides them, I don't know, 4% of their loan amount, maybe that's $8,000.
Exactly.
And you buy a $200,000 house, you need $7,000 down payment. So I mean, you don't need a lot of down payment assistance to get that happen. If you get, if you're buying a $290,000 house, you're probably getting more like $10,000 in down payment assistance. And
Right.
so that covers down payment plus a little bit of the closing costs, and then you can have your seller, pay your closing costs. Now,
Exactly.
I always say people don't just do that because you're a nice person. They do that because it's part of the negotiation.
Right.
And so it works in the deal where your seller can pay all of your closing costs, and then down payment assistance pays the rest. So that's an option that a lot of people have used, and I've had people that are making $45,000 a year buying a $250,000 house.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any money. Now some people get a gift from their parents.
Right.
Or their relative.
Rich uncle.
Or yeah, I always say Uncle Rich.
Yeah.
If Uncle Rich will give you money, that's a better way to go than down payment assistance any day of the week. But unless the price is greater at Thanksgiving dinner, that's different.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If the turkey tastes different because of the
Exactly.
the uncle giving you money, then definitely go with the DPA.
If you never hear the end of it. But yeah, what we're seeing is that people just don't know what they don't know, and so and nobody wants to talk to the mortgage guy. Like I always say, it's like calling your dentist and talking about your flossing habits.
Right.
That credit card that you let go in college comes up, or people are afraid of all kinds of things. And, we don't bite, first of all, but, we try to take a really easy approach, laid back approach to the situation. Like, let's hear your story. Where are you going? In your example, they just had a baby. They're moving to the next chapter of their life story.
Right.
And so often that's what triggers the purchase of a home. And once people realize, like, hey, for basically what I'm paying in rent, I now get a tax deduction. I have a permanent home. If you have kids, my parents had the same house for 42 years.
Yeah. They called it the Elliot house where you were
They
from.
still call it the Elliot house, and our friends go by like, hey, I went by your house. I'm like, well, it hasn't been our house for 8 years.
Been in Texas for 2 decades, whatever.
Like, whatever. And so, but having that home base for your family is...
It's everything, yeah.
Yeah. For kids, I mean, you think kids move around. I work with some foster care ministries, and one of the things about the foster kids is by the time they reach a home where they're adopted, they've been in 9 different homes.
Wow.
On average. And you think like, oh my gosh, there's no stability there.
No.
And I think in our society we're so mobile that, living in the same town, living in the same house for 42 years probably isn't super realistic. But even if it's 5 years,
yeah,
my kids have memories that they tell me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that, or I never knew that, or wow, I wish you hadn't told me that, because now I'm like, yeah. Anyway, but
yeah, and so even if you stay in the home 5 years, like you said, you make some memories there, and then hopefully when you sell it, you made a smart buy, and then you make a smart exit, and you have a little bit of equity that you can carry with you into a down payment for your next house, or use that for whatever you want. It's also worth noting that at least in Texas, as far as I'm aware, if you're married, you can profit up to $500,000 on your primary residence without paying taxes on it, and if you're single, it can be up to $250,000. Now, as you like to say, I'm not an accountant, and I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, so double check that with your CPA. But I know there are some real tax benefits to buying a house, especially if you're younger and trying to build your nest egg and try to do things and make smart moves that are going to put you in a better place financially as you continue to grow your family and move on with your life.
Yeah, and I've forgotten what the statistics are now, but I know, I've read some articles in the past for sure that, home buyer who's retiring, a homeowner who's retiring has something like 20 times the wealth that a renter who's retiring has.
Yeah.
You know, and because you think about it, you've been paying someone's mortgage.
Yeah.
It's just not your own if you're renting. You know,
Right.
you're paying your landlord's mortgage. And but if you're paying your own, you're gaining equity. Plus, the value of the home is going up at the same time. You're paying your balance down. So yeah, I mean, you end up with something that, say you do need to move and you need to buy another. Now you have some equity to use to buy the next one.
Yeah.
As opposed to renting, where you're basically starting at zero every time.
Exactly. And I saw a really funny meme on the internet the other day that was like, basically the meme was this older gentleman in a really sharp suit, kind of dancing, you know, enjoying himself, and it said, "This is our parents' generation who purchased their first house for $37 and a cup of coffee that just sold it for 1.6 million, telling me that I shouldn't eat out because I'm wasting all my money."
Right.
So there is that kind of disconnect sometimes where the younger generation is like, I missed that boat, you know, and a lot of people feel that way about real estate, about the stock market, about the crypto market, about whatever. But the reality is, with real estate and stocks specifically, if you look back, there's a long track record. You know, we know that stocks are going to double every so many years.
Yeah.
We know that real estate is going to go up predictably by this amount. You know, yes, it has its ebbs and flows. You don't want to buy a house today and sell it 6 months from now. You're probably not going to make money doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you buy a house in a nice area that's got, you know, the potential to grow and continue to flourish, that house predictably 10, 20, 30 years from now is going to be worth a lot more than you bought it for. So you're going to build some equity. As you said, that kind of speaks to the fact that people that are retiring who own homes have 20 times the wealth that people retiring who rent.
Yeah.
And that's probably because, in part, it's the equity in their home, but the other part is the smart decision making that they've made along the way, buying a house being one of those smart decisions. So I like what you said about down payment assistance, not having to put 20% down on the house. Seller contributions to me are a big thing, and I'm negotiating that very strongly for my clients right now, because a lot of people have, you know, these kids have great credit scores. They're making good income for the first time in their life. They haven't really racked up a whole bunch of debt, but at the same time, they don't have 20, 30 grand just parked ready to unload on buying a house. So once, you know, I kind of make them aware of the fact that, hey, look, we can, because they think their only negotiating power is we're going to knock down the price of the house.
Yeah.
If the house is 300, we're going to get them for 290. And I say, okay, let's think about that for a second. The mortgage between 290 and 300 is very minimal on a monthly basis. But what if we could buy the house for 300 and I could get you that same $10,000 reduction that you wanted, but it was in the form of a credit from the seller to you at closing.
Right.
So that's $10,000 extra dollars in your pocket that you don't have to bring to the closing table.
Right.
And they're like, wow, that's a game changer, you know. And then you can talk about using some of that to buy the interest rates down and what that could look like for you and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
you know, I think it's really important that we, you know, myself as a realtor and you as a loan officer, that's why we do these shows like this, is we want people to understand, like, home ownership is absolutely a possibility. It's not always the right decision for everybody in the specific moment of life that they're in. But I think for a large portion of people that don't think that they're actually able to be homeowners, in reality they are. And maybe it's just, maybe it's right now, maybe it's a few tweaks on the, you know, getting that credit score up. Maybe it's saving for 2 months, but home ownership can be a lot closer than most people think.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize, you know, that when you buy a house, you know, let's say you close in December.
Right.
You know, you're not going to make a December or January payment. You don't pay till February. So
Exactly.
you kind of skip that payment and a half, you know, when you close. And so you don't have to have that, you know, that payment right on the heels of your rent or whatever, and the moving costs or the 73 trips to Home Depot everybody takes when they buy a new house. You know, like, you know, you have a little bit of time there before the first payment is due, to kind of get settled and adjust. So, and, you know, yeah, I mean, I think if people would just have the conversation, and I've had people have a conversation with me for literally 10 years before they ever bought a house.
Yep.
And now that house was much more expensive than they could have bought 10 years ago. But, and they're friends of mine, so I give them a hard time about that every so often. But point is that, yeah, I mean, okay, we'll still be here.
Right.
You know, I tell people like, I'm not smart enough to do anything other than being a loan officer. So, you know, I'm not going anywhere. You know,
Yep.
come to me 5 years from now, I'll still be here. I'll
And I
still be
love
doing
those.
mortgages.
I love those calls that I get with people like, I'm sorry to waste your time because I'm really not
Oh my gosh.
in the market to buy for another 6 months. I'm like, you know what? Great news. I actually plan on being in real estate 6 months from now. So I'm here. And guess what? I'll have bills 6 months from now too that I'll need to pay for. So, you know, I'm going to need money now and I need it 6 months from now. So, I'll need it a year from now as well. So you're in luck.
Yeah, and we hear this a lot, you know, oh gosh, I'm not buying for 6 months. I don't need to look at, if I could look at everybody's situation 6 months out, it would be a game changer.
Right. Yeah.
Because, you know, maybe there's something on their credit they don't know. Maybe there's something on their credit they're doing they thought was beneficial, but maybe it isn't, you know, and it doesn't always cost money. I mean, I've seen people raise their score 40 points without spending a dime.
Yeah.
And so if we can look at that bureau ahead of time, look at what their financial picture is 6 months ahead of time, we got a lot of time to fix things, you know, or
Exactly.
to help position them in a better position where they have a higher credit score, get a lower rate, you know, all of those things.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So, you know, it's almost a benefit if you have somebody who's a few months out rather than scrounging and rushing and trying to piece everything together. I want to talk about, you know, kind of in that same vein of difficulty with younger buyers being able to buy homes. So I saw a statistic that there's 30 renters for every one home that's on the market in the US right now. Now, if you look back 20 years, a little less than 20 years to 2006, that number was 10. So we're 3x the number of renters to people that are selling their homes and putting them on the market. So that speaks to the inventory shortage that we've seen. And that's why a lot of people, when I talk to them, they're like, why are home prices not coming down? Interest rates have been high for so long. Isn't it the rule of thumb that when interest rates go up, home prices go down? And I say, well, you know, you would think that. However, supply and demand always wins out.
Right.
And when you still have way more people that want to buy houses than there are homes on the market, then you have the people with the supply, you know, holding all the cards. And so what is your take on why there's 30 renters for every one home seller now as compared to 10 just under 20 years ago? And what do you think needs to be done about the inventory?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, you know, back in 2006, you know, everybody thought HGTV was out.
Yep.
And so now I can flip a house. I can buy a house. I can buy a rental, fix it up, lease it out, you know, all of those things.
And a camera crew will follow me around.
And I don't even have to prove my income. I don't have to do anything, you know. So there was some of that back then that was just starting that. But the reality is that more and more people have moved out of their old house and rented that out and bought a new house, you know. So that's
Right.
a small part of it, right? But I think also, you know, yeah, rates were 3.5%, 4%, you know,
Yeah.
2%, whatever, during COVID. And so there was a large segment of the population that was waiting, going to wait until it gets down to 2%. Well, you might have to wait your entire lifetime.
Right.
Like that specific set of circumstances is so unlikely to ever happen again.
Yeah, and it comes with a global pandemic and a shutdown,
Right.
and it's
Yeah, it's not good things. And so, you know, the climate has to be just perfect for that to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and in the meantime, you know, they're renting and they're throwing away more and more. Your landlord is always going to increase your rent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you go to sign your lease and all of a sudden, oh, guess what? It's $1,000 a month less. No,
Never
it never
happens,
happens. You know, but your mortgage payment stays the same, you know, and except for taxes and insurance. You know, those are going to go up over time.
Right.
You know, sometimes there's tax cuts. You know, we had a homestead exemption with the school district that improved. You know, it basically doubled the exemption, homestead exemption, which is a discount on the property taxes. So, yeah, actually, people's taxes did go down in our area
Right. Sure.
last year. So, but you know, I think that's a big part of it. And I think there's just fear in buying a house in the first place. You know, so I think that a lot of people think they're renters, but they could be buyers if they just, you know, had the conversation, if they got out there and took a look. And you just got to find somebody. There are plenty of agents and plenty of loan officers who are like used car salesmen.
Yeah.
You got to buy it today. You got to buy it right now. You know, like oh yeah, that one just went off the market because, you know, there were 17 You 17 bids on it, 17 offers on it.
Right.
Okay, that is not happening very often right now. At least not in Houston.
No.
You know,
And Houston's one of the most, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So there's a lot of folks still coming here. So
Yeah.
if we're not seeing that kind of craziness here, across the country, I can't imagine that.
But yeah, I mean, there's more of an inventory shortage, in some of the northern states.
Right.
I think in the Midwest and, New York and Maine and areas like Massachusetts, places like that, there is an inventory shortage still. And here's the thing that I think people miss, and that is, the magical number right now seems to be about 6. When the 30-year fixed rate without buying it down and all these discount points or whatever the lender's charging you, just an honest 6% 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that seems to trigger a jump in sales.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened. It did. In mid-September, it was down in the 6, high 5, somewhere in that neighborhood, and all of a sudden people started buying, and guess what? It went back up, and they stopped buying.
Yep.
The reality is that let's say everybody tomorrow decided that is wait and see. For those people, all decide to buy a house tomorrow. We don't have enough houses.
Exactly.
And so, I'm never the Carson, well, you got to buy right now. But I will say, you got to consider it right now. Like, let's talk about it. And if it makes sense, then great, and maybe it does make sense. And maybe you end up buying a house. And then when let's say the pandemonium does kick back in, when rates come down 6 or below, you've got your house.
Right.
When the market picks up, you have less opportunity to get seller contributions, and a cut in the price. Sometimes you're paying over the price, right? So anyway, back to the renter thing. I think that contributes to why there are so many renters out there.
Yeah.
Because renting's easy, right? You just sign the lease and there you go, and you can move every year if you want to.
Exactly. And I think, inventory does have something to do with that as well. And I think, seeing as how many new builds are happening here in Houston, I feel like the builders, these are multi-million-dollar multinational companies in some instances. They don't just do things on a whim.
No.
If they're building inventory homes like there's no tomorrow, they see this shortage and they see the pent-up demand. And I think that will kind of be the what do you call that? The pressure valve on, or the valve on the pressure cooker. They just open that up a little bit and let some of that steam out and kind of make things where it's a little bit more of a normal functioning market, where it's not 30 buyers or 30 renters for every one seller. If we got somewhere closer to that 10 mark, or even 15 or 20, I think you'd have a much healthier market. Sorry, somebody is tap dancing upstairs here. So but
Monday morning,
it
we're all excited.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we usually do this on Fridays, but scheduling conflict. But Monday morning, here it's bumping here in the office.
There you go.
It would not be an episode with you unless we talked a little mortgage rates. So let's finish on that. Where are rates at today, Monday morning? What is today, the 18th of November?
Yeah, I mean, the national average is right at 7.
Okay.
Now, if you go look at the Freddie Mac rate survey, you're looking at rates that were, number one, they have some sort of buy down involved, and they also are from 30-ish days ago.
Right.
Because it's stuff that's closing now. I have a service that I subscribe to, which is fantastic, and they keep track of what's actually being locked today.
Okay.
That's going to close in the next 30 days, or whatever it is.
Right, because if it's closing today, it means it would have locked 30 days ago.
Right.
Yeah. Or more, yeah.
I mean, we're back up to 7. Some days it's a little less, some days it's a little more, but the point is that it's generally about 7. FHA is always going to be a little cheaper. VA is always going to be a little cheaper than a conventional loan. We can get into that in a different episode, how that all works. But the reality is that, we're not at 6, we're not at 5 anything. You can buy it down to that, but I wouldn't recommend it, because most people are going to refinance in the next 18 months anyway, when rates finally do come down. So buying it down now doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you're never going to recover enough money for the cost it costs you to buy it down. So where is the market going? Well, we had this election, and it's been an interesting ride since.
Yeah.
We've had as Trump continues to announce cabinet members, the market is reacting one way or another. Energy Secretary, he announced a possibility today, who's a CEO of an energy company, and they're going to take that. Well, sure enough, that company's stock went up, and you see the market's just doing all kinds of crazy things, and it's kind of an ebb and flow. It's hard to predict.
Yeah.
We have December 18th is the next Fed meeting, and the Federal Reserve is supposed to cut the
federal funds rate.
The federal funds rate by a quarter point. There's a lot of people. I mean, we've gone from that being almost a certainty of 90% certain that that's going to happen. Now it's more like a 60-ish,
Right.
Because there have been so many positive reports. There's a lot of speculation that Trump's going to induce these tariffs, that's going to cause inflation, all these other things that are out there. There's arguments on both sides,
Sure.
right? But the point is that, there's a fear that will happen, and investors are emotional people. They're driven by fear,
Yeah.
fear of loss. Like, if I put my money on this, then I'm going to lose, whatever. Or, confidence as well. It's another emotion. Hey, I'm confident. If I put it on, I don't know, Tesla, then
Yeah, that's probably going to be okay over the next 4 years.
probably going to be okay. Although, he had a little hiccup there for a while.
Yeah.
We ended up with a whole bunch of Tesla cars parked in an Amazon warehouse parking lot, not far from here. But, the point is that, yeah, I mean, the markets are just responding to so much right now.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is watching things like unemployment. They're trying to, their mandate is to keep the inflation at 2% or headed towards 2% at least, but also to keep the unemployment down as well.
Yes.
Because as you raise that federal funds rate, it's harder for businesses to buy, to invest, to do the things that grow their businesses.
Right. And then layoffs happen, and then that unemployment rate goes.
Exactly. And that's just it. If the federal funds rate is low enough that, bank loans are low enough that you can actually expand your business, maybe you take out a line of credit or whatever to hire more people or do more marketing or whatever you're doing, then you're employing more people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the struggle that they have. So, what is happening with rates? They're up. What do we expect to happen to rates? They'll go up or they'll go down.
Yeah, they'll do one of two, or they'll stay the same.
They could stay the same. There's that. But I mean, there's no real, we joke about that, but there's no real certainty. There's no like, oh my gosh, we see this happen. And the other thing too to keep in mind is that investors are a lot smarter than me, for sure. I mean, that's not hard. I'm often not the smartest guy in the room, even though it's just me and the dog. But, the point is that they see this stuff, they react to this stuff often before it happens.
Right, sure.
Yeah. So, you buy the news, and you buy the anticipation of this.
Buy on the anticipation, sell
buy
on
on the
news,
anticipation.
essentially, yeah.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because the financial markets have responded really well to the election results. The S&P's hitting record highs, the Dow's hitting record highs, crypto is just going gangbusters. It's an all-time high. And I like the way you explained it to me the other day. You said, look, mortgage-backed securities and bonds and all, these are investments as well.
Yeah.
And so if the market is taking off at an unprecedented rate, crypto's taking off at an unprecedented rate, why would an investor want to invest in mortgage-backed securities? Well, you have to make that yield a little bit higher. And I think that's kind of why we're seeing, even though the market's taking off in the crypto and the stock market world, we're not seeing rates come down, which is what I thought would happen until you explained it to me that, not so fast. But
right.
I guess my question to you is, let's say the Federal Reserve continues lowering rates throughout 2025, a quarter point here, a quarter point there, maybe half a point here. Eventually, the mortgage rates are going to follow that to some degree, right? There's no way they're going to just keep lowering the federal funds rate and mortgage rates are going to stay at 7 or climb higher. Eventually, they kind of have to follow. Wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's a ton of factors there involved. If we talk about why did rates hit 2% and 3% for a moment, back then, the federal government was buying as much as $700 billion, in a couple months.
Yeah.
It was of mortgage-backed securities. They're not doing that anymore. They've slowed down unloading it, but they're trying to get rid of their balance sheet. The Chinese were buying a bunch, which they're also not doing as much anymore. So that's why we don't think it's going to be in the 2 and 3% range. But as time goes on, yeah, the market's looking awesome. But even then, smart investors want to have some stability in their portfolio,
Yeah.
which is where bonds and mortgage-backed securities, things like that come in. And so as that progresses, yes, rates will come down, because it'll be an attractive investment even at a lower yield.
Got it.
And that's going to be, and it's really the higher yield, if you think of it as a piece of paper here, okay, it's 5.5 is the yield. How much are you going to pay for it?
Right.
You're going to pay me a premium where I get 102% of the value of it, or you're going to pay, I'm going to have to discount it. Now I'm only getting 98.5% of the value of it.
Gotcha.
Is that really, what's worth it? What's not? How many of those do we issue? Meaning, what's the appetite for the market? It all plays into that. So, but yes, I mean, we still think rates are coming down. It's just nobody thought it would take this long.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it, Mark. So, do you have anything else to say, or?
No, I think we're good. I should mention that I'm wearing the red shirt because we typically do this on Fridays.
Yes, yeah.
We wear red on Fridays to recognize the deployed individuals. Remember every defender, remember every deployed, depending on how you want to phrase it. But the point is that our group sold these shirts for an event that supported a disabled veteran who was unfortunate enough to have his wife killed in the line of duty.
Yeah.
As well. And so and that's that's the kind of stuff we like to recognize the veteran. We want to do everything we can for them.
Yes.
In fact, today we're closing on a loan for a veteran that was a challenging road, we'll say.
Yes.
But we're super happy. He had several other lenders tell him he couldn't get it done.
That's
you
great.
Cannot buy. And I was like, no, actually, if you do this, you can. And so
yeah, and
that's fun.
Having an agent and a loan officer, if you're a veteran that actually really understands the process,
right?
How when you receive those orders to transfer to a different base, everything that needs to go on in the back so that your family can meet you there. I really enjoyed that event that you put on. It was a great event.
Thanks.
I learned a lot. I know I'm going to be a better agent now for my veteran buyers. So, for you veterans out there, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, even if you're not in the Houston area, drop us a comment. Let Mark and I know. We have a wide referral network of people that are experts in helping you out, and we love to help you. That's one of our favorite things about the job. So I think that's the perfect place to leave it.
Perfect place to leave it.
Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment and let us know, what are you waiting on to buy a house, or where are you at in your home ownership journey? We love to hear from you. We want to engage in the comments, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.